The Senate's top Democrat, Chuck Schumer, is facing calls to resign as minority leader after a group of Democratic senators broke ranks with the party and voted to advance a bill to reopen the government as the longest shutdown in U.S. history continues. 8 Democratic senators chose to fail the American people today by compromising on a plan to protect the Affordable Care Act by holding out on the shutdown. Prominent Democratic voices labeled the move a betrayal and pathetic. Senator Bernie Sanders stated, "To my mind, this was a very, very bad vote." Speaker Johnson, however, gaslit the group today, saying they had decided to put principle over their personal politics. The group of moderate senators, which included a mix of former governors and retiring members, made their decision after intense hours-long negotiations. They ultimately reached their consensus after being lobbied by eagle-eyed Republicans. House Speaker Mike Johnson urged members of the House of Representatives to return to Washington right now following the critical vote late last night in the Senate. While the exact timeline for the Senate's final votes remains uncertain, Johnson declared that the government's nightmare is finally coming to an end. His optimism followed the Senate's 60-40 vote to allow consideration of a compromise spending package designed to fund the government. "We have to do this as quickly as possible," Johnson stated at a press conference. He had kept the House out of session since mid-September, when it last passed a government funding measure, in a bid to delay the confirmation of Adelita Grijalva to prevent a discharge petition that would force a vote on the Epstein files, as the petition was nearing the 218 signatures needed for a floor vote. The end of the protracted weeks of shutdown saw a handful of moderate Senate Democrats agree to proceed with reopening the government without securing a guaranteed extension of the Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies. This decision sparked considerable anger amongst much of their caucus, who had insisted on using the shutdown as leverage to negotiate the renewal of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, which was set to expire on January 1st. Trump and MAGA were already on the back foot, and strategically, Democrats were in a good position to negotiate. Republican Senate Majority Leader John Thune did pledge to hold a vote on the subsidies in mid-December, though no guarantee of successful passage was given. Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer voted against advancing the spending package, as did all but 8 of his Democratic colleagues. Schumer did not vote in favor of the legislation which omits the centerpiece of Democrats' negotiations, an extension of Obamacare tax credits. Regardless, he's facing steep pushback from lawmakers who ultimately blame him for the 8 members of the caucus who defected. Senator Schumer is no longer effective and should be replaced, said Congressman Ro Khanna, who represents the Silicon Valley region of California. "If you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for Americans, what will you fight for?" Michigan lawmaker Rashida Tlaib said that the Senate minority leader had failed to meet this moment and is out of touch with the American people. "The Democratic Party needs leaders who fight and deliver for working people. Schumer should step down now," she added. Independent Bernie Sanders, who caucuses with the Democrats, called giving up the fight an horrific mistake. Senator Chris Murphy agreed, saying that voters who had overwhelmingly supported Democrats in last week's elections were urging them to hold firm. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries did voice support for Schumer, praising his leadership throughout the shutdown, despite having criticized him in March for a previous vote to avoid a shutdown. "The American people know we are on the right side of this fight," Jeffries said today, pointing to recent election results. The senators that crossed party lines were Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Tim Kaine of Virginia, Dick Durbin of Illinois, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Jackie Rosen of Nevada, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, and Independent Angus King of Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats. Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky was the sole member of his party to vote against the bill, which he has done for weeks. The compromise legislation included several provisions aimed at mitigating the damage caused by the shutdown. Crucially, it included a reversal of the mass firings of federal workers implemented by the Trump regime since the shutdown began on October 1st. It also guarantees back pay for federal employees once the government reopens and protects them from further layoffs through January. The government funding bill refills SNAP funds and ensures states that spent their own funds to maintain the program during the shutdown will be reimbursed. The focus now shifts to the House, where leadership hopes to swiftly approve the measure. However, the debate over the ACA healthcare subsidies is far from over. It remains unclear whether Democrats and Republicans will find common ground before the promised December Senate vote. Speaker Johnson stated he would not commit to bringing up the issue in the House. Johnson also said that House Republicans have always been open to voting to reform what he called the Unaffordable Care Act, but did not confirm a vote on the subsidies themselves. Some Republicans have indicated they're open to extending the COVID-19 era tax credits, as their expiration could cause premiums to skyrocket for millions of Americans, but they want new limitations on who qualifies for the subsidies. They also advocate for routing the tax dollars for the plans through individuals rather than directly into insurers, a key point of disagreement that suggests the parties have a difficult path ahead to secure affordable health care for millions of Americans. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.